right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Eastham Zoning Task Force meeting on August 18th. This meeting, this is an open meeting. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. So we have with us today Carolyn McPherson, Kevin Gatlin, Martin Bridge, Jackie O'Rourke, and Paul Legg. We're expecting one more Pat Canavan, who is coming in right now. Welcome, Pat. You just come to the meeting. Okay. We have approval of minutes. This was from our last meeting of May 15th, which you may have not been there, Carolyn. Paul, do you remember anything about minutes? The wrap-up meeting we had?
No.
I have minutes from April 23rd.
No, we did one quick meeting after the town meeting. Remember, we were kicking around some of the draft ideas and talking about the summer break.
We'll have to catch up.
Okay, so we'll have to catch up on the May 15th minutes. I have some notes, so Paul, between you and I, we can probably grab that. Okay. The big item today for us to discuss is the work plan for next year. Just as background, we typically sometime in early September, we usually go before the select board where we have taken a first pass at a set of issues and we discuss that with them. Now, just so you know, it's not final because we may put 10 items on a list and say, these are things we're going to look into. It may be once we start our research or analysis or something else happens, it may be we only come back with 5 or 6 of those items. So even coming up with a preliminary list does not mean those are the 10 or whatever number of things we're going to do. And then we go to the select board, who often and a couple times have given us completely new issues to add to the list and have given us feedback about some of the other issues. And then we usually go off in the fall, try to research and assess things. And typically I've gone back just before Christmas to say, okay, we might have had 10 or 12 things on the list, but here's what we're working on. We're working on 5 or 6 of them, and we should be presenting you with the report at the end of January with those reports. So that's typically how the last 4 years has gone. So I just want to sort of frame that as we go into this because, again, this is a working document. It's a living document. I don't want people to feel like, this is a completely set in stone and this is the final thing for us. So in any event, I think at this point, Paul, just turn it to you. And do you want to what would be the best things? Do we want to walk through and discuss each one of them? How many do we have here? We have 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
I'd be in favor of at least touching on each one momentarily, and the ones that we're going to push off, we'll just spend 1 minute on it so we all understand what it is.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that can inform our reading going forward. Thanks.
And then the other thing to keep in mind is we have the 5-year strategic plan, which we're wrapping up. And really that plan's going to be that's going to be a kind of a living document. So the whole structure of that's going to be changing. So obviously as things come off, they'll come back on. It's not just going to be a static plan. And so I think when we're looking at this plan, we can keep in mind how we want to prioritize things we're not going to get to this year, but we want to stagger them out. And even beyond that, there's still things that can be added on. So I would like to the extent possible, synchronize this work with the strategic plan and kind of like come back and Carolyn's on the strategic planning committee also. So we've been talking about that committee is going to do kind of quarterly reports, quarterly checkups to kind of have a running status on things. And so I think there's just flexibility, I think is what I'm trying to get at, that we can continue to update. Things change and select board may have a new priority. What we're trying to do is kind of have a filter so that things get structured through the.
No, that sounds like a good plan.
And sorry, one So what I was gonna do is once we organize ourselves here, I can then update accordingly in the strategic plan, the things that get laid out with the years and so forth. So going through the list, number one, the commercial uses on residential property. Again, this is really trying to target potential detrimental activities regarding use of rentals. But I think also just really, use of outdoor space. I think a lot of it lends itself to the short-term rentals, but everyone, bocce court, pickleball court, outdoor kitchen, swimming pool,
All in one.
all these things, if someone's trying to maximize use of their space, it could impact the neighborhood. Where we left off with this was Nantucket, as we talked about, is dealing with kind of the short-term rental issue itself, the nature of it. And that's been a bit of a roller coaster. So we're really kind of waiting to see where the litigation ends up. But I know Nantucket has been trying, they haven't been able to pass bylaws that kind of put the nature of the short-term rentals in a box. But what they've been also trying to do though is address the use of the property. So not the rental, but looking at bylaws that regulate the turnover, not that you can or can't have the rental, but the rate of turnover, and also
Right.
some of the softer things like that get at nuisance issues. So there's kind of a
Did
menu of things, but
people get the news article I forwarded?
Yeah.
Yeah, earlier this summer. So we know that they've gone back to town voters 4 times with different iterations, 4 times. It's really year-round residents that have opposed it.
Yeah. And the town itself is supporting the Airbnb people, right?
Yeah, the town's supporting it. They've now appealed. And because the land court decision has not been reversed. And they've appealed. And so we're just waiting to see. I mean, it's sort of interesting, and we'll have to go back to town council. I mean, I think it's the kind of thing that if the land court or the appeals court affirms the prohibition, it really not only does it affect Nantucket, but I have just the broader question of what does it mean for the rest of seasonal communities, and is it really, is it going to be one of those things the minute someone files suit, or does the town have to proactively do something? So a lot of wait to see.
And I think that a town like Eastham, it's part of our culture that everybody rents a cottage for a week. Is it possible that when we're looking at this, hopefully next year, that we're looking at stuff that's less than a week? So when people are like, can we have different regulations when someone's just coming in for 3 or 4 days?
Well, what Nantucket did, they tried to make it allowable, just general, and that was shut down. So then they went to a working group and they came up with something where they were going to create a new zoning category called the Nantucket rental, whatever. But basically what they were doing in this new zoning category is they were sort of taking out the prohibitions about commercial or, the distinctions, and saying a Nantucket rental program will be from Memorial Day to Labor Day with a maximum of 6 turnovers. They tried to bucket that so you could have whatever.
Yeah.
Six,
But it's
2 weeks.
basically 2 weeks now, which
2 weeks.
sounds pretty limiting, but anyways.
Well, 12 weeks over the course of 6 turnovers. So, you could do 12 weeks of rental. The long-termers, shut that down.
Yeah, it's also exclusionary. You're saying that you can come and rent a house in Nantucket, but only if you can afford it for 2 weeks. So if someone says, oh, I can only afford to go to Nantucket. Oh, I know, but
But if
no one's
it's
gonna rent it for
turnover,
3 days.
and it's week.
So I'm just saying we have to watch
Yeah.
what seems to make sense.
Yeah, so anyways, I'm just giving you as an example, you can step out of this
Yeah.
and create a whole new zoning category. I mean, we could have the Eastham rental zoning program. But again, it's all
Okay.
hypothetical.
Mm.
So,
And it's a good example of, we could spend the whole hour on this one. So.
yeah. And I think this one is something we want to work closely with because it's going to have financial impacts, borders with health department regulations and all that stuff. So this one, when we do tackle this, I think we need to make sure that we have like a good working group that has some other staff folks involved with it. So.
and I would imagine
It's-
select board would be, I mean, I just think if this,
Yeah, we all know what works,
Yeah.
you know, because I was chatting with my wife about this a few days ago and we're pointing out, okay, that's a rental house, no problem. That's a rent, you know. So we picked up the three close to us and we're like, yeah, week to week rental, different cars every week. That's all we notice is different cars. But on the other hand, we know there's these mini resorts that are popping up all over town and they've got pools, 3 cottages next to each other with a shared pool.
Yeah.
And there's 14, 15 cars there and you ride your bike there. I'm pretty sure you can hear a few from your house, Tom. And that is.
well, I mean, that gets to an issue of enforcement. I mean, there's a broader issue of enforcement because supposedly the Board of Health is monitoring. Do they still, I know they didn't hire the company, but are they monitoring? Because if those houses, Martin, I don't know what they are, let's say they're zoned for 4 bedrooms and that would be theoretically 8 people. They're supposed to be monitoring whether the leasing company is advertising it for 10 or 12 people can sleep there. So
Yeah, that is being monitored,
that is being monitored,
but
but then the actual practice of whether.
yeah,
10 or
people
12
still go
people
ahead
show
and
up.
do it, so.
Well, even the idea that you could have, also, I'm concerned about exclusionary. So the idea that you have 2 families with 3 kids each packed into a little cottage like it's been happening here for 60 years isn't the problem. The problem is that you have 22 30-year-olds that have rented
Yep.
the house and that there's a huge party going on all the time. So the number, so anyways, we'll get into this topic because it is a lot of stuff and we want to make sure we're going after
Yep. Okay.
the quality of life of the neighborhood versus the number of people in the waking up for breakfast.
Yep. Okay.
Inclusionary, so I recommended this one because we're starting to see some issues with this. We have one project making its way through planning board that's triggered the inclusionary. We're anticipating another one. And really the crux of this one is we put the bylaw that we have on the books in now to really protect against a large development that's going to have, multiple units coming in. And so we're kind of like catching the minnows and the whales with it. And what we have is coming in as smaller projects from local developers that are really just intending to build a few apartments for, workforce or whatever. But the way we structure this bylaw is that it requires that all of the units be included on the state's subsidized housing index, the SHI index, which is, it's good. It gets us towards our overall 10% goal, but doing that triggers a lot of regulatory requirements because then the state, you have to do everything by the state standards. You have to run a lot. The single biggest thing is you have to run a lottery. The developers are responsible for running a lottery. That gets very expensive. There's a lot of other steps you have to go through basically so that the state can say this qualifies for the SHI. I think there's a time and a place where we definitely want that. But for the smaller projects where they're only triggering 1 or 2 inclusionary units, I agree with the feedback I've been hearing. It's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
Now we can.
If the cost of the lottery, for example, is 25,000.
Yeah.
Estimate.
So I think, and we had our housing consultant that works for the county already look at this. So we have a preliminary report on some recommendations for this anyway. So I think if we tackle this, done a lot of upfront work, but basically I think we can structure this so we maybe have like a, inclusionary zoning, the one on the books, and then an inclusionary zoning light model or something where it's just built for smaller projects and there's a little more flexibility where we can still we absolutely want to get the long-term, deed restriction commitment that we have this protected as housing, as affordable housing or workforce, but do we necessarily need it to count on the SHI? That's really the thing. Once you insist on that, it just triggers a whole lot of other parts that we're not necessarily in control of and the developer's not. So that's kind of where we're, that's the basic version of just looking at that and trying to have a.
How close is the town to our 10%? 40B, nowhere close.
3%, 3.
So the idea of adding, so this is adding 3 or 4 units here and there and not counting towards that total is a better thing than not having them at all.
Yeah, I mean, the danger is that the smaller projects, they could just back off the whole thing and say, I'm going to do 1 less unit and just get out from under the inclusionary. And these are the numbers we're talking about, I'll just not do it because I'm not going to spend 25 grand or whatever on the lottery.
4 units as opposed to 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we just gotta look at just that aspect of the.
Is the
small
state aware of
projects.
that particular issue though, with smaller developers and smaller projects? Or is it
Yeah, well,
it's nothing they can deal with?
well, it's not so much the state, it's the way we wrote our bylaw so that it forces the projects to be counted on the SHI, which then triggers compliance with the state.
Okay,
So we can adjust that accordingly, however we think is best.
I'm just trying to find that happy medium of not putting the developer through additional cost, yet still get credit for those units.
Yeah, I mean, there may be a way to do that, but I don't, from what I've seen, no, because you kind of have to. Yeah, the state wants, you're getting credit for
You
all
have
the
to be able to
state's
prove it.
accounting of it, and so they want all of the paperwork, they want all you have to follow all the affordable, the
The waiting list.
fair housing
everything
marketing
else has to be
plan.
managed by third
So-
party.
Fortunately, the one that we're working on now for the project on Massasoit, the applicant's been, he wants to work with the town. So
Which project is this, by the way? Is this Associates?
yeah,
Where
the old capabilities.
capability
yeah.
building, that's not.
So we've been able to negotiate a little bit that in lieu of a lottery, we can utilize the regional ready renters list.
Yeah.
And there's some little flexibility, so we don't have to run the lottery, but it's still like, this is kind of like, we don't always know that that's going to be an option. So we still have to go through the state and ask for a waiver from that. And then there's a couple
Like I
other
said,
things.
this is just the first that's come through. If you have a lot of smaller developers, this could be
Yeah,
a
so
wave that comes through. You got
yeah, and again, it also goes back to just having a bylaw that's predictable and I'm coming in with a smaller unit. This is,
So this is staying on the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, why don't we're gonna probably
Quicker.
spend a whole meeting on some
I know.
of these things, so why don't we just. We want to get to the point where we think, and in the inclusionary, we really should be doing that. So the next one,
the incentive model bylaw, again, I recommended that we postpone this. We need to circle back with town council because there is some pending questions about our ability to regulate
Yeah.
year-round occupancy. This kind of dips back into the ADU
Mhm.
piece too, so we'll know more on how, when the opinion comes back from the AG on the ADU, this will direct our course a little bit, but just think we could.
just an FYI, we met with folks from Truro and they had an ADU bylaw that they put year-round rentals in, and it has come back from the AG that you can't regulate tenure year-round, you can't mandate tenure year-round.
Can you regulate primacy? Is this your primary residence or not?
You didn't ask that question.
Because
So it's,
that's pretty much, oh, sorry. go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, so I'm just saying, Truro got a letter, we haven't gotten the AG's opinion on our ADU, so we're in a little
Because in
limbo.
my mind, that's the poly, I mean, to me, that's what, the only thing that sounds just is to say, this has to be your primary residence, you're registered to vote here, you pay your taxes out of here and everything else. And if you're not here for 9 months because you're hiding out in Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia or whatever, but this is,
Yeah,
we are primarily.
I don't know.
Well,
So,
that issue will come up.
Yep.
On the motel conversion thing too, probably. When we talk about
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
So next year,
we're gonna wait, yeah.
I mean, this is all up for discussion. These are my recommendations. Single family to multifamily conversion bylaw, I think. Again, this one, I think, is possible for this year. This would basically allow, like right now, in the residential district, if there's an old antique house that could be divided up internally into multiple units, you can't do that right now. You can't have multifamily. You can only have single family or duplex or some combination with an ADU. And
and I think the economy and our culture has changed so that, the idea that people are looking for a 3-bedroom house. The aesthetic still exists, but there's, people are looking for a 1-bedroom condo and an old farmhouse. I think this is a good one to work on.
yeah, and I think that's one that fits nicely with all of the kind of neighborhood aesthetic and quality, community character thing where it's outside. From the outside, you're never going to know that there's multiple units in there. It's just going to look like
Yeah.
the old beautiful antique house, but
And I think
get the density.
Yeah, conversion's gonna be important so that it doesn't become just expansion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's all gonna come down to the septic capacity
Yeah.
on the lot ultimately, but
well, that's an interesting question, Paul, because I recently talked to someone who just who just put in, she's on the ocean side, an alternative IA system. And and she's actually this came up as part of one of the sewer discussions, because she's in the sewer region, and she was asking at one of the sewer meetings, what happens to me? I just spent, I mean, it was tens of thousands, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for an IA system. And Jackie said, well, we'll try to work with you. But on the other hand, I said, why did you put an IA system in now? She says, well, I wanted a guest house for my grandchild, and I wanted more bedrooms than I could have under the old rules. So I put the IA system in that allowed me to qualify for more bedrooms. So I'm trying to think through this, like if we've got rules and regulations that is tying lot size and building structure to, because we've been leaning on Board of Health and Septic, what happens if people put in new systems and theoretically they could grow? I don't know whether, this may not be a problem. I just keep trying to figure out the interface between, if you're limited right now to 3 bedrooms, but you put an IA system in, do we care as a community that you could maybe have a 5 or 6 bedroom house? As long as you stay within the site coverage parameters. I don't know.
So when you say it, you're framing it in a way of saying a 5-bedroom house, which we can all say we don't need more 5-bedroom houses. But if you look at it the other way and say you have a 3-bedroom house and a 2-bedroom ADU, or if you still have 5 bedrooms on the lot that's spread out into 3 housing units, then we would agree that's probably a good thing for the town, lining up that we have more housing units.
However, this goes back to the issue of if those housing units, it goes back to the Nantucket case about, is that just creating more short-term rentals?
Right, but you have to create more housing units first to get more housing units, and then you can regulate underneath that. So I'm saying so being against new technology. Oh, no, I'm not saying against. I'm just I'm playing devil's advocate too, but there's both sides. But
I'm just saying there's implications that you could have many more units, and then it all starts getting tied into year-round rentals. Where's the regulations? It's just an issue.
the next one, so tiny houses. So Eastham has accepted the designation of seasonal community, so we're kind of obligated to do this, which is zoned for allowance for tiny houses. I'm recommending we hold off. God, first, I don't know what the time frame is from the state that you have to adopt something. So unless there's a requirement that you have to do this ASAP, I say we hold off, because there's still some confusion, I think, about the tiny house. So the way it is now, like, we don't have in our zoning, we don't have anything that prohibits you from doing it. I mean, a tiny house, it's a house, it's just a small house. So, but as long as you're meeting the state building code and health code requirements, we don't say you can't have a house below a certain size. So that's kind of like, I'm not sure exactly what we need to do.
There is a minimum size that kicks in.
There is, but that's Board of Health.
200 square feet or something.
Yeah. And well, that's the other part. That doesn't all, you're right, that is in the zoning, but that doesn't line up with the building and health code. So there's some cleanup we need to do regardless, but then figuring out how this all kind of fits together.
How do you sleep at night knowing all these things here with each other? We're all in ignorant bliss here.
But Paul, isn't this one that's caught the select board attention for several years? That they keep asking about it?
They have, but again, there's nothing that's prohibiting. Like, someone wants to build a tiny house, as long as it's meeting, if they can figure out how to meet the 3 codes in a way that all comes together. Right now, the way they don't line up, but they could do it. And there's nothing that we're prohibiting against it.
When we take this on, would we be able to do it in concert with the Board of Health and the building codes to sync all 3 at the same time?
Yeah, that's what I'm recommending. So the building code and this health code are two state codes, so we're gonna have to adapt to those because those aren't changing. But
But I think also Carolyn, I mean, and we've made several, Paul has attended a couple meetings and I've made several entrees with Senator Seer to try to get a sense of things. We're kind of waiting for the Seasonal Communities Advisory Board to make they created this new law. Seasonal communities is a broad umbrella where a lot of things, tiny houses, ADUs and other things started to fall under it. And so they have these broad laws, but they've got a working group or an advisory group that's supposed to be making recommendations to the legislature about what the regulations will be. So we don't know what those regulations will be in terms of this. And I don't know, we kind of thought maybe the fall, but they're still scheduling meetings
Okay.
into the fall, so I think it's probably 2026 when we actually see them send something to the legislature. And then we
Okay.
read our response.
Agreed.
Okay,
next one is ADU bylaw exempt from the site coverage limits. This was something that came up as part of the Affordable Housing Trust's review of last year's this past town meeting's ADU amendments. So, I think what I'm hearing, based on what Mary and I have been hearing from the Attorney General review of other bylaws, I think the provisions that we put in that require the year-round rental may get struck down. And we don't know what else. So I guess I'd rather wait to see if we need to, what the full scope of redoing the the ADU bylaw is, rather than keep opening up the bylaw multiple times. So
And we don't know when we'll get the AG's report.
It could really be any time,
Mhm.
but it's usually, I would hope we get something in October, November.
If we
Right.
got it in October, November, would we want to add it? If that gave us the clear direction?
well, that and the seasonal communities is also taking up some ADU. Aren't they taking up ADU issues? The seasonal communities, Paul? I
I don't know. We're hoping that this is one of the items that we're hoping they'll clarify, like the ability to have these year-round.
yeah,
Because if the residential requirement goes, year-round residential requirement goes away, now you have somebody with a two-bedroom house on a 20,000 square foot lot that is limited to, they can only expand their house by small, 20% or something. And now they could say, oh, I'm just gonna put an ADU out back. And I'm exempt from all these rules, and that'll be my third or fourth bedroom.
and I've raised this question with Senator Seer. Because of this issue, you can't regulate, or theoretically, you can't mandate year-round housing. As a matter of public policy, we're sort of saying ADUs were an attempt to create new housing and new rental housing. And now we're saying, but if you have it by right, and you don't have to have year-round, and you can't force someone. I mean, Paul's already starting to see it quietly. I won't
Yeah.
point to any projects. People are building guest houses.
Yes,
And that's not, as a public policy, helping us in any way. So, I mean, I think there's some bigger issues here when we go to frame this.
Well, it also just creates this kind of weird middle ground of the rental. So we can prohibit them from the short-term rental as it's defined at the state level, which is the 31 days. But we can't require that to year-round. So then you're stuck in this middle. So people are gonna, if they don't want to get around that, okay, I'll rent it for
a month at a
a
time.
month or whatever, but that's not what we need. So
Yeah.
it's like, to me, this is so bizarre, just because to me, it seems so obvious that I don't know why it wasn't addressed, because exactly, So I'm hoping they can clean this up through some seasonal community regulations, but we don't know that yet, so. I think the other thing I'll mention that I did listen in on a presentation from the AG. And they were talking about these ADU bylaws, and I think from what they said, they are going to look at ADUs are allowed by right for each principal dwelling on a lot, which means for a duplex, you would be allowed one each, which is something we changed in our bylaw to not allow that. But the way that's looking now, I think that's pretty much a done deal because they've already, based on what they were saying at this, that
So they're saying that you'd get one ADU per principal residence.
yeah. So
And then if you wipe out the site coverage limits, does that mean now you can go over to Cedar Banks with the, whatever, they got 15 condos there and each person there could put an ADU? I mean, it's not gonna.
Yeah, no, I
But
know.
like you could end up with something like that where everyone says, I want an ADU.
you know, I mean,
Well,
it's still,
it's totally in contrast to some of the work we've been doing of
I know.
trying to maintain neighborhood character and
Yeah.
not overdevelopment. I just,
although that, well, I mean, that's some nuance we'll have to work through. I mean, those are condos. I don't know. how
Yeah,
that would-
that's a bad example, but put some sort of a.
But same thing, so, but like we're saying, if we went back and said, we're gonna do multifamily you can do a single to multi, like break up the old antique house.
Right.
And they might make apartments or condos, but that's not gonna be. Everybody in the main house is not gonna be also put a ADU, you know, assuming they could physically
Yeah.
do that, because that's not a principal dwelling. The way it would be defined, we have to work through that, but basically
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, as of right now, someone comes in with a duplex. That's considered two primary dwellings, so they could each have an ADU.
Mhm. But they still have to meet all the other site coverage limits and health department limits.
Correct.
Oh, right now, yeah, but that's what we're saying, that's why this could be problematic if we exempt them from site coverage. You know, you'll end up with,
Yeah. Well, again, we have to wait. We have to wait for what the AG says about
Yeah,
that
okay.
also, because they may. Yeah, they may say you can't. If someone, you can have an ADU by right, but then we're saying you can't because you get a site coverage, they may strike that down. We don't know that
oh,
yet.
the AG might
Yeah.
say the site coverage that doesn't apply.
and I don't know where this stands. I was at a National Seashore meeting maybe 5 months ago. And they were mobilized, the committee was mobilizing to appeal to the Attorney General to exempt the National Seashore from ADU by right. And they're making an argument that it doesn't fall under that. I don't know where that argument stands. They were unified in their opposition. That's 30% of our town, so
Wasn't there a case in Wellfleet about that? Where somebody
It's still
built an ADU in Wellfleet and this.
and they're still debating that, yeah. Okay,
The next one, reduce minimum lot size in residential districts. So right now, the minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. So if you want to subdivide your property, you need at least 80,000 square feet to do so. This would be looking at, do we want to change that to go back to what things were like at some point in the past where the minimum lot size have changed? At one point, it was 20,000 square feet. That's why the most of our properties in town, most of the lots are 20, 25, 30,000 square foot lots. So this would be to examine, do we want to go back to that to allow creation of smaller lots, which ideally in concert with the site coverage limits would yield more development potential, potentially more affordable well, not deed restricted, so more
Well, we just
honest
yield more.
houses.
I mean, we keep talking about affordable housing and the SHI. The reality is we need any kind of housing we can get. That's not just short-term rentals. So,
well, I mean, again, it's a chicken and an egg. We've got to figure out how we can regulate short-term rentals, because
right.
I mean, one of the things I've asked Paul to do, Jim Kildahan 4 years ago went through the assessing records and he downloaded and sorted those records by, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 and 40,000 square foot properties.
That's this method.
Yeah, we've got a map that shows that.
Yeah, we've got a map. Yeah. He did a lot of detail, but I guess the big takeaway I had was in 1988, when they went from the 20 to the 40,
Mhm.
they had done that so late that according to that map, or at least according to Jim's analysis 4 years ago, 85% of our town was already less than 40. So the 40,000 was mostly on the ocean side. There's part of me that I would really like to see the data and see where this land is, because I don't know, it is sort of like, is it so small of a, is there so few lots? And are they already, the neighborhood's already built out that, I don't know, I feel like, is this a problem we're solving if there's not a problem? I mean, you may say that there's some great opportunities, and I'd love to see the data that we could, maybe there's some development opportunities here, but I just would like to see the analysis.
On the map, it showed if we were going, for example, from 40 to 20, just because that's the way it was before, there are about 775, 40,000 plus parcels. So any one of those 40,000 plus could decide to do this. But that's not a huge number compared to the total number in the town. The ones that are under 30,000, which is 4,400 parcels, by far the bulk of what we have, unless we go down to 15,000, which I kind of doubt that we would do, there's nothing that they could do. They couldn't, they couldn't split in half because they can't meet the 20. So I'm not sure that we need to think of this as a huge groundswell. On the other hand, those that are above 40, if some of them wanted to split and create an additional housing, that's additional housing.
But some of those, but many of those lots that are greater than 40,000 can also go the subdivision route. The state law to put in a subdivision. So like when you look at Atlantic Oaks or the big campgrounds that are some of those big lots.
But if we did this, obviously they still have to meet building and health code. So part of, Paul, what you said about delaying until we get further along in the wastewater planning.
I think this one and the next one, the undersized lots, go together. Again, because we adopted the seasonal communities, we're obligated to adopt zoning that allows development on undersized lots. So in our case, that would be lots under 40,000. But I need to research this more. I don't know if this, like right now, you can develop undersized lots. I mean, that's what happens. That's basically all that happens around here. You usually end up going to the zoning board because you got dimensional issues. So I don't know if this means that you can do this by right. You don't have to go, so this one needs more time I need more time to get some guidance from what we're obligated to do versus what we might want to do. But I think these two things go together, because if we're allowing development of undersized lots, I mean, that's the time to also look at, do we want to be able to create more undersized lots?
But in this statement here, you say it's from the state saying it's to make attainable year-round housing.
Yes.
So potentially we could say you can develop under 40,000, but you have to tell us why it's going to be, you can put a year-round restriction on anything that can be.
And I think that's something if we want to lower the lot size, maybe we do this in connection. So you can make the smaller lots if we want that, but they have to be affordable.
Something we did 3 years ago, which I really think could probably generate more interest if we marketed it, and I said this to Jackie and Paul, we found there was a provision that if you had a 30,000 square foot lot, you could by right have a duplex, if you had the site coverage. We then extended that to 40,000 and above. So not that there's multiple families, but we haven't seen any, these lots. And I really think there may be, I think with a lot of the zoning changes we've made, I've said this to Jackie last week, I really think there needs to be a communication to all property owners, whether it's around clear cutting or fencing or site coverage or whatever, but I mean, we've not seen, and we've created this allowance and we've not seen any action on two-family homes. So. All right, well, I'm gonna keep going. You get a lot.
Yeah, the next one is looking at adopting the model bylaw for, well, basically this is adopting some form of form-based code, but for the residential district and the District E, which District E is basically right, this area right around Town Hall, the post office, the 7-Eleven, Buddha Bob's, this little node right around Town Hall. I think if we wanted to do this in the short term, it would be easier to just look at District E and say, what items in the form-based code we just adopted are applicable to District E, and kind of just translate that over. Because right now this area is governed under a totally different section of the bylaw with different triggers, different everything. I think looking at it town-wide would be, gets a little trickier for residential. But basically, this is a model bylaw the commission drafted up, so we would be starting from scratch. And obviously, we have our own stuff we just adopted, so.
Given everything we did in the DCPC, I mean, I'm sure there's much, we have to look at the individual parcels, but that sort of ends at Salt Pond, and I think this District E goes from Salt Pond roughly down to 7-Eleven, which is residential, but is also public buildings, public parks, and some commercial. So there was part of me that said, well, all of that analysis we did, the DCPC, could we just extend it another mile down the road? Because we covered residential.
It certainly makes sense that if we're creating a wish list for a robust town center in Northeastham that allows all that stuff, living on top of shops and stuff, not to have it to our actual core historic downtown here, it doesn't make sense. So I could see a few high rises on the early part of Samoset, no problem.
I'm sorry, what is it?
So maybe, you heard possibly District E only. Okay, why don't we keep going? Get a whole other page and.
So that's a yes.
Well, we'll come back and confirm yeses. We've got a lot of nodding going on here, but we'll confirm our yeses.
Okay.
I'm trying to minimize my fall reading list.
The Cape Cod.
It's a quiz at the end of this summer.
So the next two, I think, also go together. So the Cape Cod Commission has put together model bylaws and design guidelines, basically to address environmental impacts. So they have flood area design guidelines, which is basically best practices for how to design your house if you're in the flood zone to minimize impact. But also aesthetics. And the next one is a model bylaw for the floodplain overlay district. This really has some far-reaching implications if we were to adopt it. Mary and I met with the conservation agent and the health director about this because the bylaw, the second one, has two components. There's a zoning component and a conservation commission regulations component. And this is on the Conservation Commission's radar. What we're trying to do is get the timing so both of these groups can do it in tandem, so we're coordinated. And I think where we left off was that the health and environment staff agreed. So, and probably to not pursue this right yet because we got so many other things going on.
Well,
and also
no, go ahead.
It's going to take. Well, there's a number of things. So we're working on the climate plan.
Yeah.
We're working on the wastewater plan. We want to do this when we have all the pieces kind of set and then adapt accordingly.
No, I was just gonna say, I went to the, and with Kevin's wife, I went to the, climate action
Yeah.
plan presentation. I have the chair of the committee here with us, Tom. They're working on a schedule to come back in September with sort of a final draft for more public input, and eventually by the end of the year, beginning of 2026, be in front of the select board. There are, as Paul has alluded to, there are really big policy issues that come up around this. And so I think it's, we've always taken the point of view that we look to the town approved plans and visions and then think about how we construct regulatory guidelines to support those visions. And I think it's really going to be, from a policy and political point of view, really important for the town to opine on the climate action plan, whether it's accepted as whole, it's accepted with amendments, however it's accepted. I think the policy guidelines, guidance is going to be critical to us because Rich Bevenue was there, and these bylaws will affect or model bylaws and the mapping that's being done. There's some really fascinating technical work being done, which we all need to pay attention to. But it's about 300 properties that could be potentially in these impact zones and some like 600 million of property value. So there's just huge issues, and I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of political sensitivities to how aggressively the town sort of positions itself to move on this. So part of that is letting that process evolve. And then there's some technical things where the Cape Cod Commission sort of put together model bylaws, and they sort of put everything in the kitchen sink in one of these bylaws, and it's got zoning and it's got regulation. And so I've said to Paul, when we finally address this, when this gets here, we're going to have to get legal counsel involved because, a general bylaw is a majority, a zoning bylaw is 2/3, regulations is a totally different process. So they put everything together in this model bylaw. We probably have to do a lot of work to figure out where things should land. But again, I think the policy direction would be really important for us as a group to hear.
So I read, thanks to you, Paul, the Provincetown Coastal Resiliency Plan.
Yeah.
And what struck me, I mean, there's a lot in it, but what struck me is all the work that went in up front, the public meetings, the graphing, and we're not Provincetown, but it just seemed like an awful lot of work with the people who live in Provincetown was very important. So I was thinking how that would play out here in Eastham. It's a lot. It's incredible, but it's very important.
Well, I would just say when the Climate Action Committee comes back with their next revised draft, they're doing a lot of input, they're doing a lot of stuff, but we should, please watch or come, we really should be keeping an eye on this one. Okay.
So the next one, site coverage, neighborhood averages. So this kind of revisiting our site coverage limit bylaw and trying to plug into the bylaw some averages based on assessing best available assessing data. So basically, this will put some parameters on. You have to be within the overall cap site coverage, but you can only expand. Your expansion is going to be based on the average. And because we've run into some difficulties on planning board, just trying to interpret this and trying to be fair about things. But it's really the projects that come in, the first ones here where it's like small neighborhood of modest houses. One person wants to enlarge, they're under the cap, but it's so much bigger than the average. It's like it's under the cap, but it's so much bigger, it kind of blows out the rest of the neighborhood that everyone's going to try to catch up. And lost the spirit of what we're trying to do.
That's been my issue with that, is that when we went in and started putting some caps on there, I think the impetus behind it was We just don't want the town to be overwhelmed and in 20 years have a bunch of big houses and all the smaller ones that attracted people for decades are gone. What we did was a good thing, but all it did was to slow that process, because we've had situations where, we take a look at all the lots in the neighborhood, and this house is small, one big one that's being proposed, but there's other larger lots in the neighborhood that could support something that big. And that totally changes the character. Everyone decides to go that route, you're going down like dominoes. And you're going to end up with a whole neighborhood of much larger houses, character changing totally, which is to say that what we did originally didn't work. But
Well,
you have to have an objective way of doing it, because right
Yeah.
now the best you can do is they throw back at you, their attorneys will throw back at you and say, yeah, but your bylaw says I can go up to X
Yeah.
number of feet.
Yeah.
And you can argue all you want that it's changing the character of the neighborhood, but that's so subjective, it doesn't hold water when it gets to court. So
Well, also, when we talk about the character of the neighborhood, Eastham is a very rural community that's starting to feel like a suburb. So we have these big lots and small lots that get developed. So I think you can look at some of these places where we just looked at the lot sizes here. There's neighborhoods of under 10,000 square feet that have, 40, 50 houses, and then they're right adjacent to a bunch of 2-acre, 3-acre
Yeah.
lots. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that we also, as a holiday vacation destination, we end up with all the shoreline property. It is very, very expensive, and the economics aren't going to work for you to say you can only build a 900 square foot house, because everybody across the street and 3 blocks away from the ocean only averages out at whatever, 1,200, 1,400 square feet. That's just, you just,
those properties are
but
gonna
that's,
be.
yeah, but I'm saying, but if you go down this path, you're just asking yourself for more lawyers and more court cases, because someone who's buying a $3 million house on the bay and plans on renovating it, and you're going to try to say that, oh, there's a house 300, the average house is only half as big as your house.
Well, it's not a legal issue. We've been down this road. I mean, believe me, there's been 2 Supreme Court decisions from Weston and Linfield, well, actually 3, one in Brookline. Towns limiting size has been.
We've
established for
already done
time.
that. We've already done that.
No, but what we did, so then the background of what we did is we had absolute caps. But we were concerned about this issue, and we debated this for a long time. This notion of, we ended up putting language in there saying the planning board should consider neighborhood characteristics and caps. And we had a whole debate about, should we put numerical numbers in here about what neighborhood characteristic was? And the decision at that time was leave the planning board some flexibility. Well, what I'm hearing from from Kevin, but from other people on the planning board, is that ambiguity just allows some opposing lawyer to say, but we
But you still have the upper cap.
we have an upper cap, but we could also have a rate of growth cap. And I'm not saying where we come up
rate
on
of what?
that,
Oh,
rate of growth.
meaning if everything is in, last time we looked at the averages, and this might have changed, they were like 1,453. I mean, it's really small properties, but you might have some neighborhoods where you put a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot home. Because to your point, what do you allow growth? I mean, do you allow people to go to 4,000 or 3,000 square feet if everything else?
I think that's what you set up the rules. That's why you have zoning laws
Well, I think that way,
about the site coverage and about, you have site coverage, you have setbacks, and you have all the other building codes. And if someone abides by all of those things, then they're allowed to build. The idea of saying that, well, there's a neighborhood 300 yards away and another neighborhood 200 yards this way, and we're going to average them in and say that's going to dictate what you're allowed to do. I just think you're on your way to court.
well, we can bring town, we're not on our way. We could have done that. We were being legally advised. We could have, it's not a court issue.
Not based on zoning, not based on what zone you're in, but just based on what your neighbors are.
Well, this notion of preserving neighborhood characteristic is a legal allowable issue. Whether, I'm not saying where we go, but the issue, and we can revisit this with town council, but I know we've been down this road a bunch of times. So.
I think like I said, the loophole where things fall through is that, yes, we have the caps, but you have an area that is very small, modest house, and someone comes in, yes, they're under the cap, but it's so far beyond the rest of the neighborhood. Now you set the new standard, and that everybody else that wants to remodel or not is gonna. And then that, I mean, this is the part that's been the most troublesome for the board to deal with, because it is, no matter how we try to get away from it, it is subjective. It's like how much is too big. So now over time, everybody is under the cap, but it's all much, much larger houses. And so you've lost the initial character of that house. And the project that this came up was a project on Aquamashad, which if you go down that, you'll immediately see the situation, but it's just all little cottages and ranches. Somebody,
I think we've had one where it's the house being proposed like 3,800 square feet or something like that. And you look at the other 18, 20 houses or so that are in the neighborhood. There was one that was like 2,000 square feet and everything else was 1,400, 1,500 square feet. That wasn't just the average, it was a tight average. They were all built probably around the same time, little ranches or whatever, you know, from capes thrown in, but that was the size of it. And the neighborhood was, you know, it was a mix of year-round people and summer residents. And it was a tight little neighborhood. Everybody knew everybody and there was a culture of it. And then you drop a 3,800 square foot house in the middle of that and people turned out. They didn't like it.
I will say on that one, you know, the planning board did work a bit on shaping the project.
Yeah.
So there was, you know, sort of the massing and the scale of it.
Mm.
They had you know, it was a gambrel, but they had a mat. So, you know, the board, we got it to twist and turn it in a way, but still, you're still left with a very substantial.
Yeah, I mean, the applicants changed the design of the whole thing twice.
Yeah.
And once was
And
shrinking
I'm not
down,
against,
second
I'm not
was the way
against the planning board having, you know, input on the control and the shape and size and look of something, but I think that I keep saying that we have, no one is mentioning the idea that if you have a piece of waterfront property and to try to say that I'm going to hold that piece of a $3 million lot to the same standard that I'm holding to a $600 or $200,000 lot, 200 yards away, that's not realistic.
So in that section of the zoning code, chapter 7, section 7, the beginning of it talks about preserving neighborhood character.
Yeah.
And it's.
And if we want to talk about neighborhood, sorry.
Wait, let me
I'm sorry.
finish my sentence. So there's a chart, so you can look at square footage, okay, and they're okay with that. But then there was no way to evaluate neighborhood character. No quantitative way.
Yeah.
The way there is a quantitative way to know you've setback. So I think maybe the planning board could use some changes so that there is something that helps with evaluating neighborhood character.
Yeah, but that could also apply to adding ADUs, letting people subdivide. You know, many of the other topics we just talked about also affect neighborhood character.
Yeah.
You know, when people start
Right.
putting ADUs in their backyard, so we're all trying to create more housing, and we're all trying to create more opportunities. You know, for there to be more year-round stuff, and it's not necessarily because someone built a big house on the bay that's what's affecting the neighborhood character.
Well, it was actually, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the limits that we did put on there, part of the impetus behind that was things that have gone on in, say, Shirtlift and so forth, where smaller houses turned into big houses. And there was nothing in the code that prevented that. And that led to a hue and cry that one way or another filtered into that change in the bylaw. So it's
changing, but what really happened later is that they're allowed to, because everybody was allowed to use the wetlands and the beach, you know, the property that was underwater to count towards their minimum lot size.
But I think
I mean, so that's the fix there was to get rid of the to create the buildable upland rule, which we did.
which was part of it too. I mean, when
That's a big,
we
it's a
first
big,
went
it's a
into
big,
the
big
limits.
part of it. So,
And we should move on, but
yeah,
when we presented this, because this issue came up, well, are these limits going to be what people can do? And what we presented to the select board and I presented at town meeting was, no, there's 2 criteria. we were a balance of what the upper limit is and what the neighborhood characteristic is. And we left the neighborhood characteristic, we defined it as within 300 circumference of 300 feet. Or yeah, feet, but because we did, and we debated this for a long time, should there be an objective criteria for what is neighborhood characteristic? We ran out of time, we said, let's leave it to the planning board, but but the lawyer, I mean, the select board was really clear that these upper limits weren't like the right of people to build to that level.
Well,
It was supposed to be a balance of two issues.
Yeah. Well, we can
That's-
talk.
So that, I mean, that's,
bylaw, there's language in the bylaw that says basically to the effect that the maximum limit does not, it basically says you're not guaranteed. that.
Max.
And that's the difficulty with looking at these projects is that they're under the max, but it's like telling someone you're under the max that we said you can go to, but we're still not going to approve it. But on what basis are you not going to approve it? And it's like you're back into the subjective area. It feels like it's too big or whatever it is. So this was an attempt to say, is there some sort of quantitative method we can at least apply so that we can explain the logic that you're beyond this average that was trying. That's the tricky part of what we did is that there's two different things. It's like we're giving you a total cap, but we're also saying you're not necessarily going to guarantee to get that cap to get that approved. So how do you deal with that?
It sounds like we're in agreement to have the discussion and try and come up with something to recommend. We don't know yet what that's going to be.
And I'll say the data that we would use is assessing data, which is not meant for this purpose either, you know? So it's not apples to apples. When someone's coming in with their project, they're going to have much more detail. They got blueprints, they got everything to scale. Like it's much more specific versus we're taking the assessing data, which is not, well, we'll have,
We've
I
had-
won't go into,
I'm
it's
saying-
not a perfect, the numbers we were using are not going to be perfect. So that's going to be part of like, if we go forward with this, we got to look at what
Based on
the
what,
data we have available, how it's used, how it's calculated, and kind of like, can we fit
It's
this?
also the idea we keep talking about when this topic comes up, we're always talking about the character, meaning the look and size of a house. But that's not what the character of the neighborhood goes way beyond that. It has to do with, you know, whether there are sidewalks, whether people feel comfortable walking their dog, you know, up and down the street, and, you know, just how many residents you have there. And I'm saying that if you're going to apply the character rule to say, to go after people that build big houses on the bay, then other people will say, well, we should be applying the character rule. I don't want an ADU in my neighborhood because you know, we've got twice as many people living on my little dirt road than we used to.
well, I mean, the only distinction there is the state passed legislation that made it, it's not even our. They took it out, they took that away from us.
I know, but my point is the character has a lot more to
Yeah,
do with
yeah.
just the size of a house. I think you're just looking at that one aspect and getting focused on that. And then people start saying, oh yeah, because of that big house, you know, there's all these other problems going on in the town because there's a big house there. And it's just,
And
it's not a real solution to what our real problems are. My point. The idea that there's two bigger houses on the bay next year than there are this year doesn't affect anybody in town.
It does affect the economics of the town in the sense that,
I disagree. I disagree that
part of
when
it,
you have waterfront, we're not in Needham that's surrounded by land on all sides. We have very expensive real estate on our coasts. And if you're trying to put in rules that are trying to limit what the value or what happens to that, I'm just saying, we're going to have this discussion going further, but that's my point is that you can't apply the same rule that you would to a 1/4 acre lot that's 300 yards from the ocean as you are to, you know, a 1 acre lot on the ocean.
well, you can't be discriminatory. And I would,
Of course not.
for personal experience, it's not just oceanfront properties that we're talking about. It happens in other neighborhoods as well. Mary, I suggest we move on.
Yeah.
okay,
Open space residential development bylaw. So we amended this a couple of years ago. Basically, we expanded this, and what this is cluster bylaw. So if someone wants to subdivide, we want to encourage them not to do cookie cutter 1 acre lots, but do open space residential, which clusters the development in area, leaves the rest of it for open space, and there are density bonuses built into that for if you go beyond the minimum open space preservation. This was to go back and look at, do we add in bonuses for if you're going to if you're going to create affordable housing component to it, would you get some density bonuses? And so we didn't do that. What we did do is expand the use because it was limited to just residential. So it's available in basically all of the zoning districts. And we were really looking at the future of, if Atlantic Oaks or some of the other lots that are not in residential want to do this, and they say we want to just go residential, we don't want that to just end up as, cookie cutter standard subdivision. So it was a good first cut. I do think we should revisit it. However, this again is kind of wrapped up into wastewater issues, density issues, because we want to be able to go back and put in.
But doesn't it also tie into the inclusionary zoning?
That would play into it as well. But what we want to be able to do is put into that bylaw specific numbers. If you go above and beyond your open space, or you're going to put in affordable, you'll be able to do X amount of extra units to get the density. But until we know what the wastewater allowances are going to be, or how the Title V regulations shake out, we can't really put in, because otherwise people don't know what they're going to get. Everything will be on a case by case basis, so you can't really predict how to move forward. So I think, again, I would recommend that we hold off on that one a little bit till we know we're further down with the wastewater planning.
Okay, when we keep going.
The motel cottage colony conversion bylaw. This bylaw does not have any wording around occupancy. So what it does is, if you're going to convert a motel or a cottage colony, it has to be year-round or seasonal workforce rental, or year-round. So sorry, year-round rental, seasonal workforce, or owner occupied. But there's no wording around what owner occupied means. So it could mean, yeah, I'm owning it, I'm not renting it, but I live in Florida for most of the year. And so there's no
July and that'll be it.
Yeah, so it doesn't really, for the instances where people are just going to say I'm owner occupied, it's not really creating the type of use that we had intended to be. So this kind of came up with the recent Collins Cottage project because it was triggering this conversion. In that case, it was going to be just basically single family residential, but it clearly wasn't going to be anybody like living there year round. And so this actually came up as some comments from the select board when they were looking at the approval of the restrictive covenant. This kind of question came up so
this is another one we're waiting for the AGs.
yeah, so we'll have to know if this is something we can even regulate, the occupancy.
Yeah.
The next one I put on, looking at creating a zoning enforcement officer position. Now, this is basically the state statute under zoning allows a town to create this other position, which basically the defaults in every town is, unless there's someone else assigned to it, the zoning enforcement officer is de facto the building commissioner. And that makes a lot of sense most of the time. But in towns, and we're one of them, where we have a lot of other types of zoning, everything's not always a building permit. And the reason for this is, blank lease, generally speaking, most of the zoning issues are coming out of some construction project or the ability to not get a building permit. So that's why it makes sense for the building official to be that. But where you get out of that, where clear cutting regulations and, all the setbacks and things. it's a lot.
Landscaping buffer.
Landscaping buffers. These are things that are not really tied to building health and safety code issues, but they're also make up probably the bulk of the issues that we deal with complaints and requests for zoning enforcement. So this would basically, and the town can do this. It requires a town meeting approval. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's hiring another person, but it's just hiring a position maybe, or just delegating
We're
another.
gonna set Jackie up.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. You said it. Yeah, basically
Describe it.
making someone else responsible for
Yeah.
zoning enforcement for non-building
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, so the idea like if someone clear cut their lot or something, somebody other than the building
Yeah,
commissioner could say,
yeah.
we're gonna, you know,
And I think in Eastham, it lends itself just because the nature of the way we do things, the planning staff, we're the ones, we're in the meetings, we're writing.
Yeah.
We're closer to the zoning bylaw than the building official, and it's a capacity thing, you know? And so this happens a lot where you gotta prioritize, you got someone complaining about a shed versus I gotta go out and do, 20 building inspection, there's just a capacity
Right,
issue, a
right, right.
prioritization issue. These things naturally kind of fall down a little bit to the wayside, but what ends up happening is me and Jackie try to help the building commissioner. But at the end of the day, we can't afford, we can try to be the middle person, we can write the letter, we can do everything, but we can't actually, at the end of the day, it still has to go under the signature of the building commissioner. So I think this just kind of streamlines things. I've talked to the town manager about it. Jackie's supportive of it. It's just,
I think it's a really good idea.
And I've talked to Jackie to lobby that, he said, I know the town is really tight on budgets, but I think this is a critical, even if it wasn't even a full-time position, it's a function that we're not enforcing. We're passing all these zoning bylaws and we're not enforcing.
Well, if there's no teeth to it, people realize that.
And this-
No one's gonna complain, so.
Yeah.
In this position would report to the town planner versus the building commissioner.
yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, but I guess it depends on, who's doing it, but
Yeah.
what position is doing it.
I agree we should do it.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, fence regulation. This is.
Yeah.
So I've said this a few times. There's a phenomena I see a lot in other towns around the Cape, and it's creeping up in Eastham, which is, we do have fencing regulation, but what we don't have, here's the thing. What people do with their side yards, what people do with their backyards within the current fencing requirements, whether it's vinyl or wood or whatever they're doing, trees. That's whatever. My question for this group to consider is, I think one of the characteristics of Eastham is we're green. And there's typically a lot of landscaping, whether it's a Cape Cod lawn or shrubs or whatever, you've got green. I can drive to 3 locations right now where people have put right up against the road, the 6-foot fence, no landscaping, and it just becomes a wall. And in one instance on Nauset Road, it's a corner lot. So it's like you drive down and it's green, and you see this corner lot. So I would like to just look at the issue of the front of the house, not saying there's no fencing, but whether we want to start looking at how high maybe some fencing should go, or even if we say, we don't want to get into managing fencing, but even do we have a requirement that if you're going to put a 6-foot fence up, it's got to go back into some subset with the landscaping in front of it. So it, visually, we're staying green as a town. But that's my little speech on
But it's right up against the road. It looks more like a fortress than it does a house.
There's one on the corner, there's a wooden on the corner of a meeting house and Nauset Road, which is wood, and it's a huge corner lot. And then there's one on Nauset Road.
Yeah.
And then there's one,
More of them all.
and then there's more of vinyl. And if you go to other towns, I told you my Yarmouth Historical District, driving through that, it was like, beautiful, beautiful historic stuff, little park, and then like a quarter mile of
Fine.
vinyl fencing. And I was like, and it's a subdivision on the other side of it. So I can't imagine, I don't know how the historic commission ever allowed that to happen, but that's my speech there. If we could take a look at that.
No, I'm in favor of it. I think it's really good that we added it into the Northeast rezoning
Yep.
this year, so.
To just add into that, I think DPW might want to be part of that conversation with sightlines and plow.
Snowplow, sightlines, yeah.
Camper, large boat storage. So right now we have in the zoning bylaw, it says if you want to store a camper, this is storage, not living in and everything. Just you can do so, but you need the approval of the select board. There's no parameters around this otherwise. So in the few instances where it's someone has, wanted to play by the rules and come before the board, I've basically just sent a memo to the select board and given them the zoning board review criteria as like something to work with, and basically looking at, let's make sure it's not creating sightline issues, pulling out of properties, if you want to look at a setback, some screening or something, and really, but the
Okay.
issue where you got like a giant Winnebago that's like right up against someone's property. But basically there is no rules around it. So these are all just guidelines, and they're all ad hoc, and the select board honestly doesn't know what they don't ever want to deal with it.
Do we
So
know how many people apply every year to the planning, to the select?
my whole time here, I think we've had maybe 3 or 4 people actually.
But that doesn't mean,
So it's not happening because
It's not happening.
It's a daunting thing.
Well, it's also just, unless someone is proactively playing by the rules, and otherwise it's just unless someone's complaining about it.
so let me understand this, there's no
We're not
rules.
going around here. No, there's no rules. It just says
So-
you need to get this select
So
board's
if we
approval.
sent it to the ZBA, we've now handed them a zoning code without any rules. So, I mean, by opening up this gate, I mean, I'm just asking a question. Do we need to then spend some time to say, well, where should storage be? The side of the house?
Yeah, I agree. I think.
How large is
I
large
think we
boat?
could spend some time creating some rules around that.
Okay.
Yeah, the large boat, we just kind of added in because again, yeah, what's the
We all
size?
know what an Eagle is, but
Is it-
Yeah, and maybe this is, and maybe, there is no size language on the camper. It's just campers and trailers, so, but,
I do remember some debate a few years ago about, there was somebody that had, 4 different or 5 different trailers, 2 boats, 2 campers and an empty trailer. And it's like, well,
I bought into a subdivision, and the subdivision had rules that I couldn't have either a boat or a trailer more than 21 feet. It's just sort of interesting that the town didn't have that rule, but I had the rule, and I've never known whether and I asked
it's important.
Paul this, I said, there's one of those dirt roads down in I don't know, I get down to Hay Road and I get the dirt roads, and I have no idea where I am. But I'm driving down the street and there's a house, and so here's the front door. There's a huge boat. You couldn't see the front door. And I'm driving down and I was like, I couldn't even see the house, but the boat was in front. And I'm thinking, it's in the middle of the woods, so who cares? But if that happened in your neighborhood,
Well, let me ask a question. In support of our rural and fishing community, would we perceive that if someone had a commercial fishing license, would we have a different set of rules for that? So like, for instance, where Bridge Road kicks off there by the courthouse, you go around the corner, there's 5 or 6 fishing boats there. That house is as tidy as could be, but they've got 5 or 6 big boats there, and it's a commercial fishing family. So my point is, can we foresee the idea that we'd have a set of rules that if you're a commercial fishing person, you're allowed to do a little bit more than a residential person who just has 3 broken down boats that they're never going to get around to fix, and I'm pointing at myself. I've got one in my front yard.
You're getting into the short-term rental conversation about commercial versus residential, because I'm sure if we look at the strict interpretation of our residential zoning code, we shouldn't have any. I mean, I've got a plumber around the corner who's got 3 vans in his.
Where you're actually getting into is in our allowed commercial uses
with a lot of
Commercial
commercial
uses
uses.
in home occupation, which currently.
Home occupation, and we tighten those up.
He's not fishing on his front yard. He's just
No, I
throwing
know.
his boat there, you know, as
I know.
opposed to somebody who's manufacturing
Yeah.
something.
We're selling.
Yeah,
Right.
but there's,
Not
no,
retail.
right.
yeah, but there's plenty of places, we all know them around town where there's boats. It's not a commercial thing. It's just a pleasure craft or whatever, sailboat, whatnot. That hasn't seen the water in 20 years.
No, that's what I'm talking about, the one on my lot.
I know one in particular it's down the end of campground. That boat hasn't seen the water in a long time.
All right.
Lost the neighbor's windows.
Oh, I'm having a lot of fun with it already. You should have seen me getting into the head of people playing golf the other day. I was telling them that this was coming. Come on, swearing. Unfortunately, then he started playing better, so I stopped talking about it because he was playing with anger. And then I found out he doesn't even own a boat.
He just wanted to be pissed for some reason, right? Sign code, this is,
So we made some changes in the sign code for the DCPC area, but even those don't really tackle adequately temporary signs. And I'm sure you've seen, it seems to be a lot of them this summer, even more so than the past, but these feather signs, flag signs, recurring promotional signs. So I don't think the sign code doesn't really address those adequately, and that poses an issue with enforcement. And really just like how we permit these. So we have allowances for like temporary signs for events and things, which have a, it's supposed to go up a limited time before and have to come down immediately after. But the signs you see around town were just everyone's putting out, beer, ice, whatever,
Right,
live
right.
bait for the, and then just out.
As opposed to music tonight,
Yeah.
it's fine. They put that sign out as a temporary sign.
Yeah, and these are out all season or they're out, every weekend. And so, you could say, okay, that's a temporary sign, but then even when you go to fill out the paper, the way our whole system is set up, it's like, there's no way to they don't fit into a good category. So I think, just trying to take a look at that and how we want to, and again, but this also gets into the seasonal business.
Oh,
So I think this is definitely something, this will be a very sticky wicket. It could be.
yeah, oh yeah, like the log cabin.
Yeah.
Selling corn with the yellow flag. If that yellow flag is out, is that a sign?
Yeah, that's it. And so this is something, if we do it, I'd like to try to work with there's a new director at the Chamber of Commerce. I've mentioned this to her. I think that could be a good ally to help get filter feedback back in from the businesses,
Right.
and also just help deliver the message. And I think either way,
So basically, all these temp signs undermine the whole purpose of having a sign code to
Yeah.
begin with.
yeah. But it's definitely something that we want to get feedback from. I don't want to have businesses with pitchforks saying we need,
Oh, right, because
but also getting this
because you
ramped
have a
up.
business in Eastham, your whole problem is everyone's driving by at 50 miles an hour
Yeah.
and you're trying to get them to stop. and spend
Yeah, and
money.
I think we have, that's the tough part with our town, is because everyone's going by with 6. It's, I look at it even in where I live in Harwich, I see the signs and, it's always, we need the signs. We got to have every advantage we can. But then to me, it's like you're actually squandering the biggest advantages, which is that you are on Cape Cod, a nice town. And if you have these signs that make it look like anywhere else USA, you're actually squandering it. So there's always a give and take. With Route 6, that's a little different because people, you're going by. But anyways, I think that's something to
But
look
as an example of something that's been successful is like in Wellfleet, the new beer garden there at, Outermost.
Yeah.
Hogs Island, thanks. Yeah, that restaurant that was there was failing for decades, and it was the same building, but they've done a lot more promotions and it includes a lot of these types of signs, music tonight, da-da-da. And, everything comes down at the end of the season, but when you drive by there now in the high season, it seems to be very successful.
Yeah.
So I'm for saying,
technically all these signs should have a sign permit, and none of them as it is right now, but it's hard because they don't fall in a good category of the enforcement, and also just once you're into the summer trying to enforce. So this is something we'd want to get ahead of in the spring so that everyone understands and we don't have enforcement issue.
Okay. I'm gonna take a crack at going over what I think we are not in. So, because I think one of the things we should do is maybe we can work on the formatting here, Paul, in terms of when we get to the select board, have things like a top list of here's the things we recommend, rationale. And then here's the things we think are important, but we would defer them till at least 2027 or until we get AG or, you know, till we get other direction, you know, so.
And Mary, I would add to that, sort of clumping them together. Several of the things we've talked about relate to AG decisions or
Yeah.
wastewater planning. Clump them together that these are the things that we're deferring because they need certain
Yeah,
pre-activities, and put them together so it's a package.
yes. No, I agree with you, Karen.
And overall, capacity. You know,
Yeah, and
you can only have 6 or 7 things we're working on.
well, you know, as I said to you, we sometimes come out of these select board meetings and we might have 10 items. And then we come back with 5 at the end of the day. I mean, we're gonna do what, and as we dig into issues sometimes, like we think things are gonna be like signage or campers. I mean, you might find we go down a rabbit hole and then we go, oh,
Yeah.
we need something else. So, okay. Commercial use of residential property, I see that as a hold. Inclusionary is yes.
Yeah.
Cape Cod Commission year round is a hold, but temporary hold. Single to multi-family conversion is, you know, it's a potential yes. Seasonal communities is maybe some potential, but it's a hold right now, as well as the ADU bylaw, which is a hold, although, you know, who knows if decisions get made real quickly. The flood area design guidelines and the model floodplain overlay, both of those are holds kind of related to climate action.
Oh, you skipped the bed.
Oh,
I think, no.
Oh, there's 3 pieces of paper, they weren't numbered, okay.
All
Do
right.
you want me to go back to?
No. Go,
Okay,
there you
I'll
are.
stay on this page. Site covered averages, yes, we're gonna take a look at that. Open space residential as a whole.
What did you say about the flood?
The floodplain, both of those are holes
Oh,
based
okay.
on climate action,
Yeah,
waiting for climate action to be completed.
Right.
Hotel motel conversion is a potential, you know, again, with AG opinion coming down, we might jump on that. So, enforcement officer, yes, fence, yes, large boat storage, yes, sign code, yes. Going over to the other page, reduce minimum lot size, seasonal communities, both of those are holds. And the design-driven model bylaw, we want to take a look at District E and maybe hold the larger residential
Yeah.
thing for another year.
Yeah, same thing.
You believe me, I'm telling you, once, you know, as I'm sitting here, Martin, some of your concerns around oceanfront property, when we get into coastal resiliency planning, I think there's a lot of bigger issues rather than whether an ADU is going to be in their backyard, you know, so I think that's, some of this will evolve. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 definites and a few potentials if AG numbers come in.
Is it useful to prioritize these?
Not at this point. I think we're still looking for information. It's kind of fluid right now. I think that if we go to the select board and get feedback, they may give us some feedback about priorities. And then we can come back. I mean, prioritizing is going to be both how important we feel the issue is and is there enough information available
And also staff capacity.
yes,
I mean, which is a whole thing throughout the town, because the town staff is doing an awful lot.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And maybe,
I guess,
if we get down to a skinny down list, that might be something, well, you might come back with another round of recommendations. Weighing in on what you think you can actually
yeah,
support.
I would anticipate that we are not gonna be able to do all of these, but
Yeah. That's the beginning, but we have 9 to start with.
It's a good list.
Yeah. Okay,
So next steps with this list is you're gonna take this to Board of Selectmen?
Yeah.
Or when was that planned?
it's not a date and I want to just look at, I know they've got.
format.
Um. I just want to see what else they have on their agenda. You know, they've got, I don't. I mean, I haven't even gone that far.
Yeah.
And we just generally get on in September and, with Labor Day, they won't be meeting.
Well, they will be having starting into their goal setting meetings.
When is their goal setting?
It'll
I
be
don't remember the exact date.
late September, October. So I know we're on for September 22nd to present the strategic plan.
Right.
Is that which
But-
plan?
The strategic plan.
Mary, I would think that, you know, the sooner the better, only because September is prime month for us to start to work.
Yeah, I know. Well, I want to have a conversation about the schedule, because we're supposed to meet on September 9th, and I know Pat can't make it, and I wanted to make a proposal. And we could probably check Paul to see whether we could get on September 8th. I don't know what else would be happening with the select board.
I can check.
Yeah. When are they taking the vote on the real estate tax exemption? I thought that was an August thing. Have they done that?
No, that doesn't happen until later in the year.
Oh, it was publicized that they would be meeting in August to set the rate. I think they have a
well-
legislatively,
I'm not sure then. I don't know if that's a discussion on whether to go ahead and actually do it. I don't think they can do the rate setting until later in the year. It's
no, that's not rate setting. The notion of whether they formally adopt it, at least presented earlier, was that there's a deadline that happens before the end of August. I don't know if it's with the Department of Revenue or whatever, but they have to take a vote that says they're gonna move forward.
yeah, I think that is whether to move forward and then the rate gets
Yes,
set.
so when are they taking the vote to move
I-
forward? I thought it was August. I just don't want to be on the same. I don't want to conflict our issues, you know, because that's a thorny issue. Let's check. We'll check. Okay. Oh, next meeting is scheduled. So we have on our schedule, we are still at the point of monthly meetings. I did tell Tom that on the paper, we have monthly meetings, but sometimes they become bi-monthly. Then the weeks before the report, they become weekly. So we have I guess there's two things. One is we have over the last 3 or 4 meetings, been meeting between 10 and 12 in the morning, as opposed to meeting in the evening. I'm wondering how people are feeling about that. I know for a couple people, scheduling conflicts, that makes it easier. Paul, do you have a feeling about that? Not having any, because I think they're working pretty good. But before we sort of
I personally like the morning meetings.
10 to 12, does that work? Yeah,
I don't care.
It's good for me. Doesn't bother me.
doesn't matter,
I'm
okay.
okay with mixing it up as well.
Okay, and that may also be the,
And I defer to the working
Yeah.
staff because if we have a 7 o'clock meeting or a 6 o'clock meeting, that's impacting their.
yeah,
schedule.
and then that's late for them. We were technically scheduled to meet Tuesday, September 9th. Pat has a work conflict with that. Would it be possible to meet Monday, the morning of September 8th? And I'm having a kind of a twofer here. I'm thinking that if by any chance we could get on the select board agenda for the 8th, we could come in on the 8th in the morning. You know, as we've talked about this, Paul, you know, with a 1-pager or a 2-pager, you know, with what we've just discussed, and everyone can get us, you know, everyone can have a few minutes to
Versus the ninth.
versus the 9th.
Yeah, I have a conflict. I have a doctor's appointment at noon. I shouldn't say doctor, a dermatologist appointment at noon,
Oh.
which means it cannot be ever changed.
Oh,
Right.
I agree with you.
I
So Martin, is your conflict on the 8th or the 9th?
The ninth at noon.
Nathan, could you
I
do
have
the
to be,
8th?
I have to be in Orleans
Could you
at
do the
noon.
8th?
I can do the eighth, yeah.
I have already got things booked on the basically all day, but Jackie's available. If we're just going through prioritizing the list,
But are we,
we can get up.
Well, if we're not going to present the select board a prioritized list, if we do have the chance to meet with them on the 8th, would we be better off, because we have our list now,
yeah,
to have the discussion with them, would we be better off to meet on the 10th or the 11th?
I agree that
Okay,
if I was going to present this to the Board of Selectmen, I wouldn't prioritize it.
no,
There's only 8 or 9 items on it. And wait until you hear their feedback
yep,
and their concern about these issues, and then prioritize with their input first.
I will not be here that rest of that week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll be away.
you're away. So, and your Tuesday is the evening, are you free in the morning?
Tuesdays all day till night. It's
Okay.
about an hour a day.
All right, so should we just keep the 9th? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
We'll keep the 9th, but, and
There'll be other meetings.
there will be other
I'll just
meetings,
have to leave 20 minutes early, that's all.
the 9th.
Yeah, I have to
Do
be
you
in
want to
Orleans.
do
No,
10 to, do you want to do 10 o'clock? We can do 9:30.
Yeah, no, that'll work.
Paul, which.
Any time's fine with me. I would.
9:30 on the 9th, 9:30 to 11:30?
And that's assuming that we're getting in front of the Board of Selectmen on the 8th.
Well, we should probably keep working anyways. We get a lot of work to do, so, I mean, maybe,
All right, let's
maybe
keep
we
it, yeah.
can. I can meet with Paul, but maybe some of the substantive things we think are gonna be like no brainers, like, for example, he's gotten a great report from the consultant with inclusionary zoning.
Yeah.
There was a guy who did an analysis about the zoning code, so that should be something we send.
Riveting reading.
Riveting, but we could dig into it. Okay. So Tuesday, the 9th, and then the next meeting, that's task force,
The 9th, are we going to stay at 10 or move to 9:30?
9:30 to 11:30. Okay, on the 9th. And then had we scheduled any further meetings?
I don't think so.
Now, you're out of town, you're out of the country. Kevin, what's your dates?
I leave on September 17th. And return on October 17th, I think it is, yeah.
You go 1 month?
Yeah,
Well, we're not gonna be able to.
missed something.
You're gonna miss something.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna miss something. I'm not gonna try to, I was gonna try to, if you've gone for 2 weeks, I was gonna say we could. try.
Anything interesting, Kevin?
I'm sorry,
Anything interesting?
going to Italy.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's a great time to be in Italy. End of summer.
Okay, so we meet on the 9th. 16, 23rd. September 30th, I'm going 4 weeks out. It's a Tuesday. September 30th. Knowing Kevin's not here,
Pat's not here.
Pat's not here. We're gonna have problems. Are you away?
No, I'm working.
You're working. Are you working every Tuesdays? Is that it?
No, it's just the month of September. I'm working just about every week.
Oh, okay.
We're not Wednesday the 1st.
Wednesday, the 1st?
Yeah, Wednesdays out, Wednesdays I'm normally busy, but
First.
Okay.
Monday the 29th.
that works for me. Yeah, well, that Thursday works as well.
Oops.
October, Mondays are kind of tough for staff to do the first in the morning. October 2nd, Thursday, October 2nd.
Go. I'm free on that as well.
Me too.
Kevin's not here. October 2nd, Thursday morning, Carolyn?
Yep.
Paul, does that work for you? Okay. 10 o'clock. Task force. I'll have to be, I have to be in Braintree at 2 o'clock, but I'll.
Do you want to push it to
No, no,
9:30 again?
no, I
Stay
can
home.
go 2 hours. If I have to some more than 2 hours to go Braintree, I'll lose my mind.
Especially
So,
September.
yeah, okay.
Oh, and that's, October, sorry, I was.
Task force, okay. Let's settle here for the moment. Let's get a couple meetings. We'll get our work agenda and we might have to do some more work. Okay. So,
Now go back to September 8th.
yeah,
What are you thinking of doing? The select board maybe?
well, we're gonna get the feedback from the select board. We're gonna have.
That night?
Well, we're hoping. We'll check. We're hoping if we can present our preliminary list to the select board. We'll then have feedback. And so that week we can. Finalize the list and then maybe actually at that point of feedback, prioritize, let's deal with this issue first, second, and third. And you know, once we get the final list, where things tend to break is there's usually a group of issues that really need a lot of research, consultation. We maybe get to either town council or the Cape Cod Commission on the line. And some of them are more like technical amendments. They're tweaking that in some respects, Jackie and Paul can kind of go away and really frame them without us having to spend whole meetings on the policy stuff. So that's what we're thinking. Okay. All right. So I want to, we've got 15 minutes. I want to do some election of officers. I do want to say that Paul and I went, you know, we did a lot of sort of survey about potential task force members. We were looking to put 2 on this year. And so we can sort of come back to this on the 8th. I will say that I did have one conversation, and he's joining us today, Tom. Tom is chairing the Climate Action Committee, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, Tom, but so you know, he was very thoughtful about both researching our work and wanted to come to this meeting to get a sense of the committee and a sense of the work. So have we terrified you?
If we knew Tom was only evaluating us, I wouldn't have been watching, I wouldn't have been watching my language.
So we will, you know, hopefully Tom will give this some consideration and we can talk about this at some other point. And I would like to, I know Pat has given me some names. I want to follow up with you on those specific names in terms of sitting down and talking with people. I still, you know, as I think through this skill set, you know, we wanted someone with sort of could represent some of the environmental issues. Some of the other tech, and clearly we've got some engineers floating around here now, but someone with construction experience or architectural experience, some of those other technical skills would be good. And it'd be good to get someone who might be a retired something, because if you get someone who's actively working, you've got conflicts all over the place. So if you have thoughts, please share them. Pat has sent a bunch that I'll go over with her, try to review and see where we come up. Okay.
The only thing we didn't talk, I'm just reviewing my notes. The only thing we didn't talk about today was I thought one of the things that let us down last year was allowing a brand new house to get built in the seashore last year from scratch. You know, the one that they wanted to move, they got the lot from the town and they wanted to move it. Like I'm all for allowing people to move their houses back from the ocean, the bay. But how are we going to keep people from knocking down these little cottages and then rebuilding something brand new?
Coastal resilience, did you read that coastal resiliency bylaw?
No.
Okay. I mean, it's all of your questions theoretically get answered in that, although it raises.
Assuming that we adopted that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I think it's going to be very interesting once, I mean, even the conversation about the economics. I mean, it depends on I'm really interested in hearing, and actually, Tom, I don't know if do you want to update, would you mind, can we put you on the spot a little bit? No, when I read there's a lot of stuff in there around technical, depending upon the erosion, the sea level rises, et cetera, some really, size limits. No new construction. There's a lot of, when you talk about the economics.
I actually read through some, I've skimmed through it. It talks about how often you can rebuild,
How often?
what you're doing within a 5-year period. If you do a project within 5 years, that counts towards
Yeah.
what you did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Mary, if we could keep on track with our agenda before we.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to.
Yeah, okay, we're not gonna do that. All right, okay. So anyways, organizational election. I think I've reached out to everyone here. Carolyn has had the thankless task of keeping our minutes for 4 years. So I am proposing that we relieve her of that, although she's done a great job. And the way Paul has set up the whole minutes and everything, it's a pretty simple thing. So I am delighted that Pat has agreed to step up to that role. And we wrote, and I've asked Carolyn, because we haven't fully, since Ed Schneiderman left, had an official designee for a vice chair. So, in case I'm not going anywhere, but in case I'm not here for a meeting or just for procedural things, making sure we have someone who can step up and run those meetings. So I would like to make a formal proposal for the votes of this committee that we elect Carolyn McPherson, the vice chair of our committee, and Pat Canavan, the clerk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have
I
a,
feel pressure that we bundle those two together.
Mary.
no pressure.
Should vote for you.
Oh, well, does someone want to nominate me? Oh, as chair?
So moved.
I was second that.
I would if I could, but I.
So now we have to vote on it.
Yeah, you have to vote on that, sorry.
I was gonna say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Which one were we voting on
This one.
Me.
first? Okay,
So,
okay.
okay.
And now we have to vote on the clerk. We only,
Oh, no, and then we should vote on,
Separately, someone is saying. we should
okay,
do
we
it separately.
separately, okay. I'd like to propose that Pat Cameron become the clerk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yay.
You can record those as 3 separate votes, Carol.
Okay.
No debate, no discussion. We've got 9 minutes. Anything else that we haven't covered today? I know you raised one issue, but
No.
no, you good? All right. I will let folks know if we're gonna be, if we do get to the select board on September 8th. And I'll let you know that, and I'll work with Paul on getting a draft of this, and we'll circulate that for the night, so you will see it. And then you can, offer your comments. You're very good about that. That's great. All right. Anything else? Thank you all.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to, do I have a motion to
Second.
adjourn?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.